Welcome to Laguna Podcast, an attempt at illustrating the lives and stories from the Texas outdoors. Today I sit down with a blue water tournament angler who is one of the co-founders to Purpose Built Optics. This is my conversation with Rob Phillips. Is there any other questions you have for me before we get started?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think I'm good.
Cool. All right, let's do it. I'm down. So I'm with Mr. Rob Phillips from PBO, and if you could run me through your first memory in the outdoors, and then kind of like your progression as an angler until basically you started thinking about PBO or anywhere in there, and we'll just go off on a tangent.
Yeah, great. That's a pretty broad opening. In terms of first experience, that's a hard one. I've actually given that some thought because fortunately I was raised with the philosophy, teach your kids how to hunt and fish, and you won't have to hunt for your kids. And so that started at a very young age. I got the fishing bug very, very early, fishing with my dad and grandfather is typical, but I just ran with that. I remember getting an Ambassador 5000. It was one of the red with the pearl grips, came in a leather pouch. Got it. I think it came from a garage sale, but I was probably 7. And I grew up in Houston, but we started coming down to Rockport when I was very young. And I started throwing that reel, learning how to cast, self-taught in cul-de-sac. And by that time, once I could chunk it pretty good, man, there wasn't a body of water that I could reach with my bicycle that I didn't cover. So I was really fishing early, and that consumed most of my time. But we came down to Rockport in the early 70s. In fact, we stayed at Seagun right down the road. And my first redfish was caught over here at the Coconut Causeway. And that same trip, I was 9, I guess, we ended up on an offshore trip. And that just completely blew me away based on catching catfish and bass out of stock ponds and getting run off the golf course.
I've been there.
Catching those fish off the golf course, trying to stay one hole ahead of the marshal. But saltwater just got in my blood, and I've been chasing pelagics and trout, redfish, flounder, the whole bit.
Absolutely.
Ever since.
So from your childhood to like your teenage years, when like you got that bug at when you were 9, was there a moment when you were like looking at both the different lives, right? Life out of fishing, or like life away from the outdoors and life in the outdoors, and you basically made that choice and were like, I really want to focus on this? Or was it just something that like you never had that moment of switch? It was always there.
Well, I guess it was always there, but I was extremely passionate about it. When I was a kid, my mother's folks, my grandfather lived up in Kansas City, and he was a bright guy. He was a big guy in my eyes. Now looking back, he wasn't that big in stature, but he was a giant when I was growing up, and I really idolized him. But anyway, he went to Rice, smart guy. I would stay in his study, and a bunch of books everywhere. And he had this big desk, and he covered it with a sheet, I guess, so prying eyes wouldn't get in there and root around and mess up his stuff. But I did. And I remember stumbling across a book. It's actually up there on that bookcase. It's a book of short stories and articles that came out of Esquire magazine. I think that was originally printed in the 40s. But I stumbled across a story by Ernest Hemingway. It was actually a letter to one of his buddies, and it was printed in Esquire because it was this conversation about which is better, which is more dangerous, big game fishing or big game hunting. And it was amazing to me at that age of 7, 8 years old, and reading off the pages about giant sea creatures and marlin and giant squid attaching themselves to white marlin, and just all the stuff that goes on in the deep blue. And I didn't know it yet, but that really struck a chord. And then I was all about bill fishing. And so came down to Rockport again every summer, went offshore quite a bit. But it wasn't until 1983, it was my senior year in high school, we took a trip to Cabo San Lucas, spent some time in Cabo. And of course, that was a very different place 40 years ago than it is now. And we actually went up to La Paz, and I caught my first blue marlin, and And from that moment on, I was going to chase billfish one way
Really?
or another.
Was that first one for you extremely memorable, or have you had more memorable ones throughout your life already?
This episode is made possible by our friends over at Gordy & Sons Outfitters, located in Houston, Texas, and employing a team of experienced outdoorsmen specializing in fly fishing, hunting, and wing shooting. Gordy & Sons is sure to prepare you for success in the outdoors. Next time you find yourself preparing for a weekend getaway or a bucket list trip, be sure to give them a visit at www.gordyandsons.com.
Well, my dad used to say, and it's true, there are a lot of people that don't understand why people spend so much time and treasure chasing blue marlin. Because it can be absolutely boring and with very little promise sometimes. But he would say that, that's kind of a disease in which some people are immune and others are terminal.
Yeah.
And I definitely got the terminal part of it. And so that's been a big part of it. In terms of the first fish, I don't really remember that first one that much. I don't. I mean, it was cool. I remember that. Actually caught it on my birthday. And it was badass, but it lit such a fire that every one of them special.
Heard. And then so from 83, how long, okay, I know there's a lot of you fishing at a very high level between then and when you start PBO. Do you want to kind of give me the chronological rundown of how all this goes down?
Yeah, so I mentioned that I spent pretty much every summer down there. And you talked about what other distractions, how come I jumped into the fishing. And I was a big hunter. We spent a lot of time chasing ducks here, and I grew up hunting on the Katy Prairie back when there was a Katy Prairie. And so that was special too. But we had a house, and my dad would pick us up at that the moment schools let out for the summer, and we wouldn't come back to Houston until the day after, or Labor Day. Midnight before it starts on Tuesday. And so that was my life. And I love sports, but sports was not high school sports was not an option for me because I couldn't be there during the summer.
Yeah.
Go to practice, which is fine. So we fished hard. And then after going to Cabo, I was fortunate enough to start working on a sport boat. And
how'd you get that gig?
Right place, right time.
Nice.
It's really the only way to answer that question.
Okay.
But I had a good friend. In fact, he's my partner in purpose-built optics. He's the one who actually started it back when it was hook and bullet. But he and I grew up together, fished a lot together, went to college together, spent way too much time chasing ducks in San Rayburn and fish as well. And he actually, when we started working on the sport boat, he came on board too. It was different back then. Nowadays, the guys chasing billfish, it's amazing. A professional crew will have 5 or 6 professional anglers.
Yeah.
And they've based on technology and as things improve in that game, those guys are chasing a lot of fish. Being able to see them with sonar. And it takes all hands on deck. But we were chasing strictly marlin for the most part and pulling lures. And that was a one-man job as far as an angler's perspective. And we had a crew. So we had a crew of 5. We fished a lot of the Texas tournaments. We fished over in the Caribbean, the East Coast, really from the Carolinas down to Venezuela. And spent a lot of time with Bill doing that. And it really galvanized that love for offshore. And then he and I went off and we had a boat for several years, he and I together when the kids were young. And then both of us kind of went our separate ways with careers and family. And I guess it's been 7 or 8 years ago we got back together. We remained friends, but we were fishing one day and started, we were chasing redfish in knee-deep water. And I looked over at him, and this is, like I said, 7 or 8 years ago. He's got probably $1,000 worth of rod and reel in his hand. He's got, all the gear. I'm dripping with gear too. It's kind of ridiculous. But I look at him and he's wearing the same glasses we were wearing back in the 80s, as was I. So we started thinking, why is that? How come everything else we take on the water, hell, our underwear's gone high tech.
Yeah.
Everything gone high tech, but we're still wearing essentially the same glasses we were wearing. So he was in a spot in his career where he was ready to go do something different. And so he started digging in, and I was kind of looking over his shoulder as to what could be done in the optics world. And we figured out that it wasn't a technology barrier, that in fact there was a lot of unused tech, I would say, in that space. But the leaders of the pack had all kind of commoditized and had been bought up by a lot of fashion brands, and innovation just wasn't on the forefront. There's an 800-pound gorilla in the space. They do a great job at what they do, and they cover anybody's head, anybody's face, and they've got 150 frames to choose from. But they just weren't playing really to the advancements of lens technology. And we found a partner that was doing some very innovative things, and where we can squeeze the light in the color spectrum to really change and optimize the sight picture that you see based on your environment. And that's how we started PBO.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes a ton of sense. Would you mind explaining some of like the other options you guys could have gone with PBO in terms of technological advancements?
Well, to get to that, I probably have to go into a little bit about what we're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, please.
And so our lens provider is our partner. We've got a development relationship with Zeiss Optics. And Zeiss, a lot of people know that name. A lot of people don't know that name, but they carry it in their pocket. So if you've got an iPhone, you've got a Zeiss component. And Zeiss really, their scientists are leading in the color science field. And they've got medical scopes, laboratory scopes, shooting scopes, binoculars, and a lot of high-end development in that space. But what their situation is, they're not a glasses, they don't have a brand that's under the Zeiss umbrella in terms of a full-blown product. They're just a lens provider as one of their business units. And they've done some things that, like I said, nobody else is. For instance, they've got glasses that people can wear that help alleviate some of the issues surrounding color blindness. They've got stuff that can affect your mood, and they've got lenses you can put on to help kind of calm down those with ADHD.
Really?
In fact, they've got a whole I've forgotten what they call it, but a whole series of lenses to affect your mood. So you think about a professional athlete. In fact, the last Olympics, there were a lot of athletes wearing Zeiss lenses, one tuned to get you fired up as you're getting ready to go compete, and then another one tuned to kind of bring you back down.
Interesting.
Post event. And so they've really done some interesting things. But what flipped the switch to us and how we ended up partnering with them, and Bill, when he started this out, he had a lens manufacturer, same lenses made by the same company that people wear everywhere.
Yeah.
But they were not interested in doing anything different. But we found a shooting company called Pila Sport, and they make lenses for professional clay target shooters. So think about your Olympian trap shooters, sporting clay shooters, et cetera, on down to your casual weekend warriors. And what's blew us away about that is when we stumbled across them, that guy's got 82 different lenses, and each one of them is tuned specifically based on target presentation, time of day, background colors, color of the target, all the variables that you need in order to stay locked in on that clay target as it's moving. So and Zeiss is their lens provider. And so when I kind of started getting involved with Billy on the business side, we sat down with Zeiss and asked them two very important questions. Number one, does this science transfer to the fishing side? And number two, is anybody doing it this way? And they said yes, and we can prove it. And no, nobody's done it. And so that's how we got involved with them. So that's a very long, around the bend answer to.
It's a good answer.
What else could you do? And the bottom line is what we're doing in the fishing side is different than anybody else. There are a lot of Zeiss lenses out there. There are other companies that have Zeiss lenses, but what they don't have is the development relationship where Zeiss actually makes lenses to our specifications. And so there are a lot of different areas outside of fishing. Obviously, shooting is one. We're not going to go and compete against Pila because they're the category king in that particular industry. But we've got a shooting lens and a clay target lens for your less competitive everyday shooter. In fact, I wear a Cordoba lens. I'm going to wear them this afternoon when I go dove hunting, but I wear them all the time when I'm shooting, and they do make a difference. But you don't look like an idiot out there with a fancy $6,000 pair of Pilas on in the dove field.
Yeah, all hat, no cowboy.
Yeah, exactly. So back to the technology. There's a lot of things that we can do. Take this outside of the shooting sports and outside of fishing that we'll consider.
If you're enjoying this episode or any others and want to support the project, I would highly encourage you to check out my new book, Laguna. 288 pages with over 300 images and illustrations, containing excerpts by Eric Glass, Chuck Nizer, Tim O'Brien, Bill Gamble, Ben Paschal, Ryan Sparrow, Michaela Elliott, Rick Hartman, Jaco Lucas, John Pilmer, Corey Bauman, Brian Robinson, and myself. Available at select stores, or you can order it directly at buylagunabook.myshopify.com.
Down the road, but right now we're maniacally
I get
focused
that
on what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have been doing a great job, from what I can see, at least getting into the fly fishing, flats, Texas stuff, which is really awesome to see a Texas brand kind of really show, like, not favoritism is the wrong word, but like show like wanting to like help and wanting to push forward like Texas guys. It's a really fulfilling thing to know. It's like, okay, we have that there, which is really awesome. Was there any pushback when you first started getting into the actual, not the business side of things, but like the marketing side of things or presenting it? Like, I'm willing to bet many people were probably saying things like, oh, y'all are just some small brand that'll be gone in about a year, this, that, and the other thing.
We still get it.
Yeah.
And I think we will forever. And because there are such giants in the industry and that have done a very good job educating the market the way they want them to respond. And so our biggest hurdle is educating our potential market that we're something very different, because there's a lot of sunglasses out there.
Yeah.
And what we found, and the reason we entered the space, is that everybody is doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And the only differentiator is the logo.
Yeah.
And you've got a lot of the same frames, a lot of the same lenses, and everybody markets the same way. And so when we decided to go to PBO, and we started out with hook and bullet purpose-built optics. So we just did a rebrand last year where we dropped the hook and bullet part of it. But purpose-built optics has always been part of our core and our naming convention. We knew that we couldn't take on those 800-pound gorillas on flat footing.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't go out market the giant fashion conglomerates that have unlimited budget, et cetera. So we set out to do something very different. And as we said, the PBO methodology is building lenses specifically based on pursuit.
Mm-hmm.
So our biggest hurdle we have to overcome is, again, telling people that what we're making as technical eyewear is something very different than what you typically go get at
anywhere else.
Yeah.
Would you mind explaining the idea or the thought process behind a technical, let's say, environment-driven lens versus a do-it-all, one color per frame, whatever?
Yeah, there are a couple different ways I can illustrate this. One is something that a lot of people are aware of, but they really don't understand, and it's a great way for us to talk about our difference. So everybody knows there's a company out there that has 580p, 580G etched on the lenses. There's a relatively newcomer that also has a 580 lens, and I'll tell you what that is in a minute. And then they also talk about they block bad blue light, et cetera. And kind of the secret of the industry, anybody worth their salt is blocking that bad blue light. That's just a marketing. That's what they chose to hang their hat on. But the 580 portion, I've talked to thousands of people about 580. And everybody can say, yeah, 580p is plastic, 580G is glass, and that's right. But nobody, after probably 5,000 or 6,000 people, nobody's been able to answer what 580 means. And that's the secret. 580 stands for 580 nanometers. And when you think about light, it is broken down based on wavelength on nanometers. And each one of those represents a different color. Like if you look at a rainbow, if you look through a prism, you see the way that light is broken down into colors, right? So 580 is the yellow light within the color spectrum. And so your 580p, 580G, those glasses are reducing, almost blocking the yellow light. Now you can still see yellow, but it's not as vibrant as it should be. They reduce a lot of that yellow because they see it as harsh light. That can actually work in some environments, but you think about where we are here in Texas. When we're chasing trophy trout, redfish, whatever, typically we're looking for ambush spots. You may be looking for fish on a redfish, and sometimes clear enough water, you'll be looking for trout, but more than likely, looking for a sand pocket on the edge of a grass bed. Well, that sand pocket looks yellow. And so if you remove that 580, that grass bed and the sand pocket kind of merge together, you don't get that distinct edge. And that distinct edge is really what you need to see in order to know where that ambush predator is going to be.
Interesting.
So if you take somebody that's wearing 580 and somebody that's wearing PBO, now back to our formulations, in our inshore flats category, we don't remove that 580 because it actually helps you be more productive if you leave it in there. So that is really the whole concept that we take across 5 different pursuits, which is inshore flats, offshore, freshwater. Got an interesting lens for senior electronics.
Yeah, I've been using it a little bit too for my filming.
And then hunt and shoot. And so what we're doing, we worked with Zeiss to build technology called SpectraLock.
Mm-hmm.
And so our whole value prop against everybody else is where you may have one lens from, in fact, there's a company out there saying right now they've got one lens, any condition, all pursuits.
Yeah.
Well, if you use the 580 methodology, if you're wearing our inshore flats and somebody else is wearing one that removes 580, it's going to be a long day for that guy.
Yeah.
Because you're going to see stuff that he cannot see. So again, we take that across the spectrum and dial in the colors and the light wavelengths that matter for that particular pursuit category and that environment, so you can be successful. And we do it across all 5 different pursuits.
That's interesting. I want to make an analogy to music production that I think would go really well with what you just said. When I was getting into music, whenever you would finish a song and you'd go to master it, you'd kind of decide how you wanted to create the master chain. And a lot of people would get really lazy and sometimes just run a big clipper or a big limiter and then clip it at the very, very end. And you'd clip a lot of the high-end dynamics. And on the phone, it sounds fine. But then you would take it over and play it at a club and it would just not sound right. It would just sound wrong. And it was almost like very, very similar. You're just cutting out a big piece of it. You're saying, okay, now it sounds fine. It's not harsh. It's not over -3 LUFS. Like, you're fine. Your ears aren't going to bleed. But it's also like I'm losing the dynamics. I can't enjoy the contrast in the music between all the different instruments and sounds. So I think that that's a really good analogy of what you just explained, and I feel like this would be a really good segue for me to tell my story on it, which is like like I just told you before we started this, like it took me a while to come around. You know, before I was running with, I think, Bajíos, and I had always just used those because before that was Smith, and my whole thing was rose-colored lenses and yellow lenses. Those were my 2 big things, and then when I moved over, I saw fine. I saw the same way. It took me about a year to finally put on a pair after I went over to the booth in Houston. And the first day I remember, like I fished it like maybe a couple weeks later. And the first day I remember thinking to myself, wow, like I can actually see, you know, trout even easier. This is something that maybe could be a placebo. I'll just give it some time. And I went to and fro between the I think those are the Mansfields and then I also had in comparison the Bajío, the rose-colored lenses, whatever. And it was a pretty sizable difference. And the only thing that makes sense, you know, even after hearing what you just explained is, you know, for me especially, and I don't know how many people might have the same situation, but me, like I am colorblind for red and green. So it really does, I think, having that little bit of extra color brings out so much more color contrast for someone like me. And it's to the point where when people reach out to me, like, it's like no bullshit. Like, I'm telling you that I feel more confident, you know, seeing fish. And it's a very, very cool to kind of feel the dichotomy between 2 lenses, and almost exactly what you're saying. Companies that are doing the same thing over and over again. And this isn't a dig at Bajío. That's my own personal, you know, like personal story. But it's like, you know, you do see a difference, and it is something that's kind of like shocking. Do you want to talk a little bit about how, like, again, like some of the people that you were involved with have gotten PBO? You know, we just talked about Bad Company and Anthony and how you got them. Or do you want to circle back a little bit and talk more about, like, you know, your marlin fishing and some of the stories and tournaments and whatnot?
No, since you brought it up, we can talk about kind of how our team, if you will,
Yeah.
our ambassadors, how they get involved. And it's important to us that we have people that understand what we're doing. I mean, back to your earlier point about is it hard to break into this market? It is. And again, we're doing something very different. So we need people that appreciate that, understand it, and really believe in it. And so, as you would expect with any brand, especially a local brand here where our customers are right in our backyard, we get people hit us up all the time. Oh, I want to be on the PBO team. I want to wear a PBO. And that's fine to a degree. We're selective as to who we bring on board for the reasons I just stated, because there are a lot of people out there that just want to claim I'm
part of the upcoming team.
Yeah, exactly. And want to wear that logo. Patch Pirate is one of my friends calls it. And I think that's a great analogy. Those guys that just want to have a logo. And so we make sure when somebody comes on board, and we don't give a bunch of stuff away. And we don't pay people. But the guys that have, quote, come under our team, and that's growing daily, are guys that we'll send glasses to and say, great, we'd love for you to have on board. First, we want good humans. You seem to check that box. Secondary, we want somebody who really believes in us. And so we'll send them glasses and say, go fish and come back and talk to me in 3 months. And it's the ones that come back and say, oh my God, I had this experience and I had no idea. And that usually happens pretty quickly, but those are the ones that we stick with.
I mean, I even sent you an email. I've never, ever sent anybody like an email unsolicitedly about a product. But I remember out of nowhere, like I was sitting on my couch after fishing. I was like, I need to tell this guy, like these things have genuinely like changed my fishing. So that's actually another great point. Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, and we get that aha moment, but you typically it's wearing something else or having somebody else on the boat wearing PBO and them pointing out fish and you can't see it. And then put them on your face, and it's like, oh my God, if I had $1 for every story that we had like that, I could probably order more sunglasses.
Now here's a question for lens technology. Do you ever think that there's ever going to be like a sideways polarized filter in any sort of lenses? Like, so for example, I've sometimes when you only have those few hours, like the first hour and a half of the day where the sun's just kind of coming up right before it's over your head. And if you turn your head to the side, you cut all the sideways. Do you think that would ever actually work in some form or fashion? Or is that just like, I mean, this one I'm just spitballing, just wishful thinking.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. We've done some radical things with Zeiss. And again, they've been a great partner to listen to some of the problems that we want to solve. And that brings me right to the electronics lenses, because what they've done there is manipulate that polarization. Now, they haven't turned it on its side, but they've opened it up enough. And the problem we're solving there, I'll just kind of walk through how we got there. Bill, he's got a cousin, big crappie guy. And he was fishing one day and he came back. He was talking to Billy on the phone. They were talking about fishing. And he said, well, hold on. I've got to get my wife to open up the gate. My eyes are all burned up. I can't even see the code. He's like, well, dude, I sent you sunglasses.
Yeah.
He goes, yeah, I know. But when I'm looking at my live scope, I can't see them. And he says, well, tell me about that. I said, yeah, I just can't. And so it's got a polarized filter on the electronic face. And if I'm wearing a polarized lens, I get this blackout and I've got to turn sideways in order to see it. So I just don't wear glasses. So we figured out that maybe there's a market for that. So we talked to Zeiss, explained the problem to them, and they came back and they delivered a lens where they opened up that polarization to the break-even point. So you could still get a lot of the same characteristics of anti-glare, et cetera, but they opened it up enough where you can see those screens that have a polarized filter on it. And that's been a big one. So I don't discount your thought there. But in that particular lens, the polarization is the same throughout the entire lens. But one thing that we also did, because most of these guys are running their electronics on the bow of the boat, on the deck. And so they're looking at through the bottom of the lens. So what we've done is we've got a gradient tint. And so the VLT, how much light comes through, we let in a whole lot of light down at the bottom, not quite as much at the center, and then less more, that's not even a phrase, even more less on the top. So when you're running your boat, the idea there, you've got a darker lens at the top.
Heard, yeah.
So
yeah, no, I mean, that makes total sense. It was just one of those things where it's like those little things that you think of, and I was thinking that on the way over here, that short drive I made, and it was just like, I wonder if there's just something there that's like, up on the horizon. Like, for example, like with fly rods, like what's the next the next step. And so I remember I spoke with Andy Deere and I was telling him, well, maybe graphene or borophene or, something with carbon fiber tendencies that might be a little bit more rigid, whatever. But I was wondering if there was like, we kind of briefed over quite a few different like technological applications for the future in terms of lenses. I accidentally skipped over the story of you getting Anthony from Badco on PBO, and then on top of that, like I would really like to go back and kind of go over some of your favorite stories in Blue Water and maybe some stuff with Billy as well, and just to kind of illustrate you guys as a team and whatnot.
Yeah, we can kind of talk about Anthony and back into our years in the Caribbean.
Dude, absolutely, sounds good to me.
But Billy and I fished on a sport boat, as I mentioned, and we traveled quite a bit. But we spent a lot of time in the Caribbean. Actually, it's the Atlantic. People call the Bahamas the Caribbean. It's not. It's the Atlantic. Mm-hmm. But that was during Pablo Escobar's heyday. And so we've got a frame, an ode to our time in the Bahamas, actually called the Square Grouper. And there's some people, it blows me away, but I guess I'm old, that don't know what a square grouper is.
I mean, I know what it is because like I've talked to so many people and I've been following, guys like Mark the Shark since I was 10,
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different, but I don't see how many people would know what a square grouper is nowadays.
So obviously Pablo Escobar, if you've ever watched Narcos, he was at one point the kingpin of cocaine and started out marijuana out of Colombia, which is where I was born, by the way.
Really?
Yeah. Haven't been back, but in any event, in that part of the world, Bahamas was actually one of their big distribution channels, and so you would have you'd have planes that would fly over and kick out the product, and then typically in that area that we were fishing, there were a whole lot of currents. You've got the Gulf Stream, and then you've got a current that runs in between Eleuthera and the Abacos. We were mainly fishing in the Abacos. Strong currents create a current rip and weed line, et cetera. And it was not uncommon back then to see bales of marijuana or other product floating in a weed line. And the locals had a term for it. Caught a bunch of fish at this weed line. There was 4 square groupers in there. There was really holding fish. So it becomes structure, part of the food chain and ecosystem for other fish, which attract the pelagic. So that was a known term, square grouper, back in the day.
That's funny. I like that you guys have you totally would go for something like that, and it's funny in your face. It's cool. It's admirable, especially in a space that takes itself so seriously.
Yeah, it was a wild time. We saw a lot of stuff. There you could tell who was in the trade and who wasn't. It wasn't uncommon to come around an island chain. We would fish every day. For marlin every day. And if we got in early enough, we had a little skiff that we could take and go to one of the reefs and spearfish and do that. But it was not uncommon to go around a corner and wind up right there in the middle of a big drug deal going down between 2 cigarette boats on their way back to Miami, et cetera. So it was an interesting time.
Yeah, and so from there, you said you were doing a lot of fishing with Billy and whatnot, and then obviously we'll go into the stuff with Anthony here in a second. But you said, I think you briefly mentioned a little bit about tournaments and competing. I'd like to go in a little bit into that, but I am curious as to, like, again, how that fishing was, what y'all were seeing, what y'all were doing, days that stuck out, especially in that time frame. We were fishing for marlin every single day. I'm willing to bet you were dialed in.
We were pretty good.
Yeah, like I go in, embellish a little bit.
Well, we spent several years fishing the Texas tournaments, and the thing about Texas, it's a tremendous fishery, and it's actually getting better due to the advancements in technology we were talking about earlier. But there's a lot of billfish caught in the Gulf Coast. The problem for us, especially in this location, it's even worse out of Houston, Galveston, Freeport. You've got to run 100 miles. Bare entry.
Yeah, the shortest run is from where I'm at right now. It's like 85, right? Something like that.
Yeah, there's great water off Padre, and we've done well in some tournaments there over the years, and I love that area. But it's just such a long run,
right? And
so back in the day, there were a handful of boats that would travel and go fish off of Florida, fish the Bahamas, and then typically it was Isla Mujeres in the spring. and then move over to the Bahamas for late spring, early summer, and then from there go down further south to Puerto Rico and St. Thomas for the full moon in September, October. Was kind of for the travel team. I never fished. I never got on a fish and traveled through the canal, so I haven't fished a whole lot of Pacific. But we wore that water out from North Carolina down to all the way to Venezuela, and it was. I was talking to Richard Gibson. Some people know that name, but he is a photographer and writer for Marlin magazine and for a lot of different magazines. And he was in that era, and I saw him at ICAST a couple years ago, and we sat and chatted about tournament where our boat actually just mopped up in San Juan, and it was all the talk because it was our first time to fish there, and they couldn't believe these guys from Texas came in there and kicked everybody's ass. But we had a long conversation, and he thinks that was the golden era of billfish, because there were still some places that hadn't been hit, and it didn't have the forward-facing sonar. I mean, hell, we didn't have GPS, and so there was a lot of dead reckoning and a lot of spots that you just wandered around and found, and it took a fishy captain to figure out those spots, and it was great. I don't know if the fishing was better. It was different. I mean, with the advent of the sonar, I think that there are a whole lot larger catches in terms of quantities of fish on a daily basis than we ever saw.
Do you think that the team levels have stayed the same, or do you think teams nowadays with sonars have more reps on bigger fish and are more dialed in?
That's an interesting question. I think that, like any sport, it's evolved from where we were, and I think that there are guys that are much better than we were, and we were pretty good back in the day. But with higher reps, you get better. More at bats. You
just get more used to that moment.
You get it, and it's interesting. I'm gonna bring in conservation into this because we were at an age where most of the tournaments, billfish tournaments we were fishing were kill tournaments, and we started fishing with a group tournament series out of Florida called the International Billfish League.
Yeah.
And it was one of the first, if not the first, tag and release tournaments. And it had you got 400 points for blue marlin, and then it graduated down for white marlin, sailfish, etc. But it was all release until 400 pounds. So if you killed one over the 400 pound mark, you got 1 point per pound. So that would be a deal breaker if for another guy that just released one. Anyway, we fished that for several years. Had tournaments in South Padre, Key West. There was always a tournament in October in Key West for Fantasy Fest, which is crazy time. That's essentially it's Mardi Gras down there. And you think Key West is weird any given day. You go down there for Fantasy Fest, it really gets strange. But it's a neat fishery. We went up to Colorado, North Carolina rather, to fish, and then a lot of tournaments in the Bahamas and Florida, sailfish tournaments in the winter out of Florida, which was a lot of fun. But for the most part, they're all release. And they're also all IGFA. And all IGFA rules state in order to qualify for a world record, you have to be caught under IGFA rules. And a lot of tournaments there where IGFA rules apply, meaning nobody can touch an angler, nobody can touch the line, you can touch a leader to wire fish, but you can't assist the angler in any way. You can't reel a fish up in the rod holder. There are a lot of different rules. The leader could only be so long, et cetera. The hook set had to be a certain way. And there are a lot of tournaments out there now where that's not the case. So back then, in order for it to be considered a caught fish, you had to kill it or tag it. And now they do what's called a Palm Beach release. Once you touch that leader, then that's considered a caught fish. And so I don't like that so much because there's a lot of shit that happens boat side. That's really when things get western, especially if you got a green fish and the opportunity for screwing up, that's typically where it's going to happen. And so I wish that more tournaments were IGFA. Now, the issue with that now, because you've got sometimes 6 anglers sitting there holding a rod all day long, it's hard to do an IGFA governed tournament that way because there's just so many moving
You have 6
parts.
different anglers now, right?
Yeah. So So back to your question, I think that the anglers have definitely gotten better. It's just a different time. It's like golf. I mean, you think Tiger Woods was good, better than Jack, or better than Hogan or some of the old guys. Well, technology plays a lot, but also conditioning and more reps, and the guys became stronger and more athletic over years.
Yeah, no,
time. So
that makes
it's
sense.
different.
Yeah, that makes total sense. One of the things I realized I forgot to ask that I typically ask people who, again, have done a lot of what we're talking about. Was there anyone that you had as a mentor in the space, or a team that you guys kind of looked up to, or maybe people you grabbed inspiration from, kind of maybe like right before you really started working with Billy on the boat, or when you were really starting to find yourself as like a upper level dialed in marlin angler?
Yeah, it's like any other sport, and even today in bill fishing, it's the same way. That you see the regulars that are finishing at the top of the heap, and everybody's got their team or their guy that thinks is the best. And one of the guys that was breaking out was a team out of Houston. The boat was run by Skip Smith. It was a traveling team with a mothership called the Hooker and the Madam. And the Hooker was, I think it's 47 GNS, and that hull has traveled all over the world. Probably more world record fish caught on that particular boat than any other boat that's fished. It's still fishing today. But that team, Skip Smith, the angler and the owner, was Jerry Dunaway, and his wife. I'm blanking on her name right now, but they were the number one to me. I mean, they were the top team. In fact, I fished against Skip and that crew quite a bit here in Texas, and then they quit fishing tournaments. They were just out there chasing records, and in the Pacific, and later in Africa and all over the globe.
Huh. What are some of the places you've been able to visit for strictly marlin fishing that you've enjoyed the most?
Well, people always ask, if you had one place to go to catch a billfish, where would it be? And that's kind of changing. But Cabo back in the day, and I think it's still true now, you've got a pretty high chance of catching something. Striped marlin. So that was a neat place. It was certainly, I miss the old days. I think there were 5,000 people in Cabo back in 1983, and that was 500,000 or something ridiculous now. So, excuse me, that's completely blown up. We didn't fish the Dominican Republic. That bite kicked off in Punta Cana after we went through there. But now it's a remarkable place to catch high numbers of blue marlin as they migrate through. St. Thomas, Puerto Rico, on the Moon. It's a big fish spot. In this hemisphere. I haven't fished the Azores, haven't fished Madeira, I haven't fished Africa. Had an opportunity once, we'll get to that, but I'd like to go do that. There's Cape Verde, there's some places now that definitely on the bucket list.
Absolutely. One of the things that, since we've talked about tournaments for so much, for like the last couple minutes, why don't you run me through your one or two of your favorite tournament results or tournament stories? Be an underdog story. It can be whatever you want.
Tournaments, they used to get pretty rowdy.
That's why
there were a lot of neat stories back then. In the IBL, it typically was the same 25, 30 boats, and they would travel or charter a boat. But there was one guy, Pete Fisher. I don't know if he's with us anymore, but he had a boat named the Bill Fisher, and that guy was a hoot. And we'd have dailies and have obviously regular Calcuttas and pots, et cetera. But he was always the guy that was going to bet the most. And there was one time in Treasure Key where he ended up losing the daily, and he came in, essentially built a G-string out of monofilament leader, and came in wearing just the G-string and monofilament leader with $100 bills all the way to fill out his G-string, and since he lost a daily, that was his way of delivering to the winner. Pretty crazy stuff. There was always pranks that different teams would play on one another. We had a boat we were really close to called the Beastmaster in Treasure Key, and the night before a tournament, we went and ran 600-pound mono through the scuppers to the cleats, to the pylons of the dock. When they said, it's time to take off, we're halfway out the harbor, and the Beastmaster's still trying to figure out why the hell they can't get away from the dock. which ultimately ended up with a half-eaten pig with an apple in its mouth in the stateroom of our sport fisher that evening. So a lot of stuff like that went on.
Oh man, that's cool, man. It's cool because I feel like you guys get to like maintain this level of camaraderie throughout the whole circuit, if you will.
Yeah,
right? I assume that's how it is.
It is. I mean, it's like any other.
Yeah, like the Redfish League or Redfish Series. I've heard.
You get to know people and spend a lot of time, and it's typically like in the Bahamas. You're on one rock, and there's not a whole lot to do, and so hanging out drinking rum with the crew next door is an every night occasion.
Well, yeah. So like I know that like when Rick Hartman and Bill Gamble and all those guys used to go over to the casting competitions, that like some of the best casting and the stories weren't actually in the tournaments. It was actually like behind the motel at like 3 a.m. casting. And it was like, that's where a lot of the really fun stuff is, or like the cooler stories. The Africa story, or almost going to Africa.
So 1987, things were winding down with the team that I was on. Bill was with me throughout that, and he moved back to Texas, and he was about to get married. I was dating a girl for a while, but I was living in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the guys actually, Captain James Roberts, who worked under Skip Smith for a while, and he ran the boat, the Renegade, had just gotten on board a new boat that was going to be kind of the second boat to go from the U.S. coast and explore and fish Africa, which was always a place I wanted to go see. And he invited me to go and fish with him. By the way, he never came back. But I was really at a crossroads because I had been dating a girl for a while, a couple years, and she had an opportunity to go work on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that in my gut, if I went that way to Africa and she went northwest of Chicago or north of Chicago, that would probably be the end of it. So I made the decision to get married instead. And didn't have much money. Sold a Jeep, bought a ring. And to this day, after 36 years of marriage and 3 kids, I tell my kids, every now and then I have a good day. And I don't think about that decision.
Should have gone after.
Yeah, so he never came back. He's still fishing. He's all over the globe, and he's one of those guys that's made his mark. He's
I mean, and that story, that connection actually, ends up being a friendship between you and a founder of Badco.
Yeah, that's kind of funny. I was following Badco on Instagram, and for people that aren't aware, he's kind of the Michael Jordan of sport fishing. He's got plenty of money, and he's running a program doing it right. And his whole deal is he over a 4-year tour of the globe, in which he's got a couple different motherships and sport boats placed strategically all over different parts of the world based on when the bite's going to kick off there. He's trying to find the one. I think in his heart, although he won't admit it, I think he's trying to catch the biggest marlin ever.
Mm-hmm.
But he was fishing off the coast of Brazil, and I saw a post about a year ago, maybe longer, and saw that he had one of the guys fishing with him was the same guy that invited me to go to Africa. And so I just, he's got 100,000 followers. I'm a nobody, but I sent him a note, said, "Hey, I love what you guys are doing. Love being able to live vicariously through the Bad Company tour. By the way, please say hello to Chewy to me. I almost went to Africa, got married instead." And over that, he fired right back on Instagram. And over about a 6-month period, we chatted quite a bit. And then one day I told him we were doing PBO and would love for him to take a look at them. And we sent him some glasses, and he's been wearing our stuff, and he does a lot of. In fact, he's doing some testing on some new offshore lenses for us when he kicks back off here in January.
And then the gray for those frames on the desk behind you, is that the same gray that the BCS 50 was painted?
Yeah. So all of it, he's got his patented gray, the Bad Company gray, and so we ran a very short run of frames for he and his team with Bad Company, and we just got back a couple of weeks ago from sponsoring his tournament for his foundation, the War Heroes on Water, which was a phenomenal opportunity for us just to give back a little bit. And that tournament, it's invite only, and it's all combat veterans. And so most of those guys, or a lot of those guys, are Purple Heart recipients. Some of those wounds you can see, some of the ones you can't.
Yeah.
They're mental, but it was a really humbling experience to be able to give away a pair of PBO in Bad Company Gray to each one of those members. And what was humbling about it is that they were super psyched to get it. And, it's kind of crazy. We're giving away $250 pair of glasses.
Yeah.
And those guys have sacrificed limbs and many years of their lives to go over there and defend us. We were the ones that were grateful to them. And we're just really proud to be part of that experience.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you could tell which companies, it might be a little bit of a side conversation, but I feel like you could tell which companies have like true American pride, American morals behind it. And it just makes you want to be a part of it more. Because it's like, I want to stand with a company that stands for my morals. Like, I don't want to if you're going to tell me that I'm wrong for X, Y, Z and the other thing,
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're at the 50-minute mark. I like to keep this like an hour 15. One of the things that we haven't really had a chance to talk about, because we kind of keep going on tangents, is your actual fishing stories. Do you want to hit me with like 1, 2, or 3 of them, and then we'll kind of close it out?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Cool.
I mentioned the Puerto Rico tournament where we smoked everybody.
Of course you did.
That was a great moment. That was actually the 33rd International Day San Juan, which at the time, and I think it still exists, was one of the most prestigious and most participated in by country of any billfish tournament in the world. And there was a representative from all over. And we ended up we got biggest fish, best angler, best boat, best visiting boat. And I think there was another category in there as well. But what's interesting about that particular tournament, I mentioned that we had been fishing the IBL and the release tournaments. Well, the San Juan tournament was a kill tournament, and they killed. There was a lot of marlin, and it was an interesting tournament in that for the first time it wasn't just our angler. We had teams, so we had a visiting angler from other boats that would come fish on us. I think we fished 5 days. Would come fish on us on our boat as well, and actually Billy was our angler that we sent out to fish with other teams too.
Is it like to prevent cheating or what?
Yeah, a little bit. And actually, back up real quick on our release tournaments, the IBL, they had an observer from another team would travel with you all the time. But there were two things out of that San Juan tournament. The fact that we did actually kill it was great, but that win gave us a voice to talk about conservation, because we hung, I don't know how many blue marlin they hung up there, 100, 130 during that week, a lot. Wow. And it was kill everything. And one of our visiting anglers had caught a 90-pound fish, and we had to kill it because it was going towards his points as well as us as a boat. And we had a linen napkin in the salon, and as we're coming back to the weighmaster to hang the fish, I put a napkin around the anal fin of this 90-pound marlin, kind of like a diaper. And so they bring up the fish, and the guy says, "What the hell is this?" I says, "A diaper. Haven't you ever seen a baby before?" And that pissed a lot of people off, and rightfully so. I was being a little smug, and I shouldn't have been. But at the same time, we got some press out of that, and people were coming to talk to us about that, and did a little local news, local sports channel kind of deal on that, the whole conversation about conservation, et cetera. And there's a new way to go, should consider do a tag release, et cetera. And then we had this giant awards banquet, in which our entire crew had to go out and buy a suit because it was coat and tie only to go to this hoity-toity awards banquet.
Yep.
And gave me a platform to stand up there and talk about release tournaments. Which is interesting that they're now on their 76th annual tournament for San Juan. And for the last 25, 30 years, it's been a release tournament.
Really?
Yeah. So it's good to think that we may have had
How long
impact.
after you stood up in front of that room of people and gave that speech did it switch to catch and release?
I don't know the answer. I wasn't fishing it, but there was the 70, I guess it was 75th last year in Marlin Magazine. There was a big article about that. And it's good to be part of that. There was also one of our visitors one day was this chatty guy out of New Jersey, and I forgot what his name was. I swore I'd never forget, but let's call him Bob. It was Big Bob had a lot of money, and he was telling everybody just how he was going to have to get him one of these sport fishing boats, and he had more money than God, et cetera. And my mate, after a full solid day of that, had about had enough, and so he invites Bob and me up to the bridge, and we get Bob kind of on the side of one side of the flying bridge, and Kenny, my mate, on the other side and with me and Jimbo in between them. And Kenny says, "Hey, Bob, I bet you got a couple $100 in your pocket." And of course, Big Bob breaks out a big billfold with a bunch of Benjamins in there, and he hands it over to Kenny, and he's talking about how much money he's got. Well, Kenny starts wadding up $100 bills as we're running into the harbor and throwing them out one at a time. About the second one that went over, old Bob was ready to fight. And Kenny flat out grabbed his wallet, handed it back to him, and held on to it while Bob was trying to get it back. He says, "Bob,
Couldn't even pay for gas.
if that bothers you, you have no fucking reason to own one of these." And that story made it around, and it made it in one of the Marlin magazine articles years later. But
That's funny.
that was Bob. But we caught a lot of fish. I never caught any giants. We released some fish around 700 pounds, but the biggest fish I ever killed was one that I caught. Walker's Key was just shy of 600 pounds.
Wow.
And that was for one of the IBL tournaments, and that was a great fish. It was a great fish.
One of the things I wanted to ask is, again, on a tangent, was you made the whole white linen napkin thing. You were already mad about having to kill these fish. When did you find yourself in this conservation mindset? Because I mean, if you were a blue water angler, it feels like it's kind of hard to find yourself wanting to be conservation minded, especially in like starting 83, early 90s. Like it's not saying you were spearheading the conservation, but like it wasn't really that, popular back then.
It wasn't, but it was catching on. And a lot of that was some of the benefits of GCCA, now CCA. And so Redfish Wars, et cetera. I was down here when all that was going off. So we were mindful about our catches back in the day, but the blue marlin thing was just
different.
It was different. And there was one of the Rockefellers and a couple other guys started the Billfish Foundation. And that was right about that same time. And then they started endorsing some of these release tournaments. And so we were right in the thick of that. And so we were tagging everything. It was actually a kind of a cool thing. And I have 3 or 4, I think I have 3 sailfish and 1 white marlin that have been, where my tags have been recovered from fish that have been caught. And it's interesting to see how many days at large, how many miles they covered, et cetera.
Yeah.
And so it was just it was a pivotal point for us when we got into IBL to really start focusing and looking at some of the destruction of the population of billfish specifically. And there was another guy that we knew a little bit that had really done all of this in Costa Rica and made the mind shift, helped the mind shift away from commercial harvest of sailfish to putting a dollar value from a tourism fishing standpoint back to the country. And it was, excuse me, it's like 10 to 1. And so all that was coming together about the same time.
Heard. Okay. And you had some experience or some life experience within the Redfish Wars?
No, I was here.
But you heard, did you hear any crazy stories?
No, no more than anybody else. I don't have it. I was very young at the time, but I was here. I met Walter Fondren and some of the other guys that were early on in the GCCA.
Heard. Okay, well, why don't we do this? We're at the hour mark flat. Why don't we hit your favorite story fishing with Billy, right? Because I feel like I really think that'd be a cool one. And then after that, we'll close it out.
That's hard to pick.
Pick 1, 2. I don't really care. Or just, it doesn't have to be a favorite, just a one that you
Yeah, I mentioned that running out of Texas, you got to run 100 miles.
Yeah.
Right. In the Bahamas, people typically go 30 miles as a long run. But where we were based in Treasure Key, there was a current rip that ran in between Eleuthera and South Abaco. and there was a place called the Hole in the Wall that we would go fish, and it would drop off to 1,000 fathoms, 600 yards off land. I mean, it was just ridiculous. But there was a tremendous amount of current. We always caught fish. It was a 100-mile run. And so everybody thought we were crazy, but we would do it, and we would do an overnight trip. And one of the trips down there, we caught a fish. It was a decent fish, had it boat side, and had a big shark, tiger shark, come and take half of it, one bite. But we stayed over, and we were fishing. We had lines in. We didn't catch anything. We're kind of stuck in this rip. And I'm in the chair with a pillow, sleeping. The actual captain had watch, and the rest of the crew were sleeping down below. And I don't know, 3 o'clock in the morning, something like that. The captain wakes me up, and we've got outrigger lights going, and he starts banging on the deck of the flybridge, waking everybody up. And the way he did that was, guys, get the fuck up here and grab all the guns. And that's a wake up call.
Yeah.
So
no shit.
Everybody comes up, half asleep, guns in hand, up on the flybridge. And what had happened, he was marking a boat on the radar and was trying to hail him. And of course, remember, this is pirate, drug pirates, drug dealers, the whole thing. And sure enough, we see this blip on the radar, and we're trying to hail him, and the boat's getting closer, it's not responding. And so we decided it's time to get out of there.
Yeah.
So we fire up the engines, and we're floating, stuck in this rip, which is no big deal. But it turns out there was a big polypropylene anchor rope, about 6 inches. And we didn't see it. And we put it in gear, and got in our starboard wheel and wrapped up. About that time, the boat stopped. We could see it on radar, and then it turned into 2 blips. What they had done is they offloaded into another boat, and that boat, although we couldn't see it, was making a much quicker pace, headed right direct us. And we really thought we were about to get gunned down. And so we struggled. I've forgotten who it was. Somebody jumped in the water, and it was rough as snot, but we were in a protected area kind of, and finally got cut it loose, got in, dragged in. The boat's gaining on us. We took our boat offshore into the rough stuff and completely blew away our pursuers. But that was one that the story gets grittier and bigger every time I tell it.
Yeah.
But it was, I tell you, it was an eye opener to woke it up with get the damn guns.
Yeah, that sounds like
coming.
What's it called? A rude awakening, to say the least.
To say the least.
Cool, man. All right. Well, to close it out, the last 2 questions I like to ask is basically, looking back at everything you've done, is there anything you wish you would have done differently? You can use the word regret if you'd like, but I think that's kind of the wrong context as to where the question goes.
Wow, that's a deep one to end. Obviously, I wish I'd taken a month and gone to Africa. Not a lifetime, but a month would have been great. But no, I think looking back, you can always think of things that you did and could have done differently. And that was when we were fishing on the sport boat. I was a very young age, and I wish I had the foresight to really dig in and to be inquisitive to all of the captains and the mates older and wiser than me, and kind of learn from them. I got the opportunity to meet a lot of guys that are legends in that part of the fishing world and spend time, but I didn't dig in with some of them that I wish I had.
Heard. Yeah.
And so I think that's the lesson: is be inquisitive,
be a sponge, soak it up,
have real conversations, and check your ego and learn from those that have gone before you, because
that's a big one. Yeah. Check your ego is big, especially now.
Yeah.
The last question I like to ask, actually, that's a different question for us. The last one. Where do you see PBO in the future? What are some plans, any new projects, stuff that you're excited about this company, where it might go? What do you guys have planned for the next, at least calendar year or 5?
I get fired up, and I know Bill does too, because every day we get validation in the market that we're pointed in the right direction. Our biggest thing is just getting the right people around us to help tell our story. And again, tell everybody we're technical eyewear. We're not the same stuff that you're used to. And I'm excited about the future because we're getting some traction, and I can see us in 5 years from now in a lot of different places than we are now. Right now we're in 8 states, I believe, retail wise, and we get orders from all over all over the globe for that matter. And it just continues to grow. So being able to be intentional about the way we grow and making sure that we don't just start putting product out when it's not going to have the sell through.
Yeah.
So being intentional about the way we grow and building it the right way and continuing to foster good relationships. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about this company.
Oh, yeah.
Because, we meet all kinds of people and for the most part, they're all really good, solid people and want to do good. So I'm excited about that. We've got a couple new frames we're about to drop.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, we've got some big heads frames. Our Mongos will fit those guys that have a giant melon and can't find them anywhere else. And then we've got another frame similar to the square grouper called the Breakwater that's been crazy popular, so much so that we've sold a bunch of them.
I have the breakwaters in my boat right now, or technically they're in my car, but they typically go in my boat right now. Fuck it. I'm a big fan of the breakwaters. I just like the wraparound aspect of these. The ones I have, these are the top shots. That's all I have, right? Yeah. So the top shots, the breakwaters I love because they look cool in pictures, but these are like my workhorses.
Yeah, for sure. And just to tie that question off back, where do I see us being in 5 years? I'm just excited about, again, the people we meet in the industry.
Heard.
And I'm looking forward to that kind of reach that we have in 5 years.
Absolutely. Okay. The last question I have is typically just as if you're talking to the next generation, think, kids 14, 16, 18 that just want to maybe get into the industry. What is a piece of advice that you'd give them?
Well, I think I've already said it. It's check your ego.
Yep.
Ask questions. Find somebody that you trust and that you look up to, and learn.
Heard. Cool. Well, I mean, we're hour 7 minutes. We've breezed through this hour. Is there anything else you want to have had said or need to have said?
No, I don't think so. This has been great. It's been a lot of
This
fun.
has been awesome. I'm glad we did it. I'm glad that, we got to hang out at the CCA banquet after you got to invite me and stuff. And I'm glad that we actually sat down and did this. Like, I know we had talked about it in like February and it's been forever, but it was like last minute. It was like, oh yeah, I'm down the street. Let's run it real quick. So I'm glad we got it done.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Hope you catch some fish this weekend.
Cool, man. All right. Well, all we got to do is just get on out of here.
All right.